Okay, I think we're live. Hey everyone, welcome to Live at 5 on YouTube for the first time. We're gonna try doing it on YouTube now. This way we can have people join that don't have a Facebook account. We know a lot of you guys do have Facebook, and that's cool, but some of you guys don't, so we want it to be accessible for everyone. It's just a good platform as well. So hopefully I'll see some of you guys. I'm going to go ahead and share this on the Facebook page in case some of you are looking to find it there. So give me just 1 second. But if you're here, let me know. There is a chat function here as well, just like there is on Facebook. It's over here. When I'm looking at the screen, it's over here on the right. So you guys try to find that and go ahead and type something in. Let me know that you're here, just like we do on Facebook. Okay. So again, give me just 1 minute and I'm going to share this on Facebook. All right, there we go. I think it worked. That might have taken some time. Alrighty, if you're here, let me know. Use the chat box. It's over here on my right. This might look like my left though. If it's mirrored, I'm not quite sure. Alrighty, it is 5:03. I don't see anyone yet, but that's okay. I know it's going to be a bit of a transition to go from Facebook and then to YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and give everyone just a few extra minutes. Alrighty, guys. Well, I am going to go ahead and get us started. I don't see anyone with us yet, but that's okay. I think someone will join, and even if not, that is totally fine. We're going to go ahead and get rolling anyways. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I've got some stuff planned for us tonight. So give me just a moment, and I'm going to do that. All right, here we go. Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about job applications. And, you know, as I started to work on this PowerPoint, I was realizing that a lot of what I'm about to tell you applies to pretty much any application or any paperwork that you end up doing. So we've got plenty to talk about. So let's go ahead and get started. So you might be asking, but why? Why do we have to do life skills about this? Applications are boring. I don't like them. Yes, I'm glad you asked, because we have to do them because we do job applications for all sorts of things all of the time. Just a few things that you have to do applications for: our housing, jobs. Maybe you need government benefits like SNAP or SSI, or maybe you're trying to get a housing voucher. You have to do applications for joining a program like Immerse. If you've been through LifeBase or if you've been through the OC, then you've had to do some paperwork for that. Maybe you want to go to camp, or maybe you want to join a club of some sort, maybe at school. Speaking of that, you have to apply to go to school. You have to apply for scholarships. You have to apply to get other services from another provider, like maybe if you want to have internet, or Entergy is the company that provides electricity to residences throughout Arkansas. Insurance related stuff, medical things. We have to do paperwork and we have to do applications for stuff all of the time. So that is why you might as well get good at it, because you're definitely going to be doing it no matter what. It's also important to know your way around an application and to really be confident in your ability to do an application, because it's often your first impression to a company or an organization. Basically, if you're filling out an application for something, that can often be your very first impression to whoever you're doing the application for. And that's really important. Why? Because a good application makes you look really good. And a bad one, on the flip side, doesn't make you look good at all. It can make you look really bad. Good applications, if you do a good job, it helps you get the stuff that you want, and it helps you get the stuff that you need. And if you have a bad application, you can get rejected. So that's why it's important to be good at them and to know what you're doing when you have an application in front of you. And so today I'm going to give you some tips, tricks, for any application. So we're going to be going over the very basics. So there's a few things you need to keep in mind if you do specific applications, like specifically for an apartment. You know, we might not cover everything you need to know. These are just the basics for everything in general. I'm trying to get my next slide. There we go. All righty, so getting started. So the first thing that I think is a good idea is to mentally prepare yourself for how long your application might be. Some of them are super long. Lately, I've been doing some voucher housing applications with a few of you guys, and those at a bare minimum are about 20 pages long. Some of you guys are turning in some of those that are like 35. So it just goes, it goes without saying, sometimes your application might be really long. So get ready. Get comfy, get your favorite pen, or if you're on your computer, settle into the couch and get comfortable. Get a coffee, soda, water, because you might be there for a while. But if you do have food or drink, if you have a paper application, make sure not to spill it on there, because you want to keep it nice and neat. Okay. Another thing you want to do is to gather the documents that you're going to need. Okay, so some documents you might need are your social security card, your birth certificate, your ID. You're pretty much going to need your ID for any application that you do whatsoever. Oftentimes, you'll also need your birth certificate and your social security card. It's also good to have a pay stub, proof of any government benefits that you get, such as SNAP or SSI. Or any proof of any money or benefits that you get either from the government or a different agency or an organization or something like that. If you also want your proof of disability, oops, I said that already. It's also really good just to keep them in a folder or someplace safe where you can keep them, where they will stay clean and nice, and you can be able to use them in the future. Because a lot of these documents you're going to be using again, and you're going to need them for more than just applications. Sometimes you need those documents for other things as well. So it's good to have. Another thing you can do to prepare is to get your histories ready. And I know that sounds kind of confusing, but a lot of applications are going to ask you for your work history or for your rental history or for the history of maybe other organizations that you've been to. They might want your current and past medications or hospitalizations. You definitely need that information for any type of medical paperwork, or if you're applying for disability, you have to have all of that information. You're probably going to want to submit documentation of that as well if you have it. And again, we're going to go into more detail here in just a minute. But if you're getting started to do an application, that's one of the first things you're going to want to do is just to keep in mind what your history is and make sure that you are prepared to outline that when you are doing your application. All right, so a few tips for while you are doing your application. Oh, and I also do want to say that if I do have people in the chat right now, since I have my PowerPoint pulled up, I can't really see the chat. So I'll have to switch back and forth to see what's going on. So if I brush over your question or if I don't see it, just give me a minute and I can go find it. But while I have this pulled up, I can't see it. So be patient with me. Alrighty. So while you're working on your application, be sure that you are using your most beautiful, perfect, best handwriting that you've ever used in your life. You're going to want to use a black or a blue pen. Always. Don't do anything colored. I don't know why. I think it'd be more fun to go over an application that had like a pink sparkly pen, but they want blue or black, probably because it shows up the best. That's another thing you want to do when you fill out an application is make sure that not only is your handwriting really good, but it's really dark and that they can see it really well. Also, you're going to want to read everything really carefully. Yes, I know it's boring, but it is worth it in the long run to read everything carefully. It often, if you read carefully, it's going to give you instructions for how to do the application too, which is really helpful. And you're probably going to have questions about how to do the application, right? Another thing you want to do as you're going is check and double check everything that you're doing. So as you go, look back over what you just have done so far. Before you turn the page, just look over what you did and make sure you've completed everything and make sure all the information is accurate. Awesome. And another thing you're going to want to do is try not to rush and try to be careful. And this might take you longer this way, but I will say again, it's going to be worth it. Rushing leads to making mistakes. And making mistakes on an application doesn't make you look good, and it can affect you if you don't get the job or you don't get the house or you don't get the benefits that you're applying for. So even though it's no fun to, sit down and do an application for more than an hour, in the long run, it might be really helpful. And like I said, you don't want scratched out words on an application, so try not to make mistakes. If you do have like scratched out words on your application, you usually have to start over. So it's just not worth it. Just take your time and do it right the first time. And it's okay if you make mistakes. It's okay. It happens to everybody. You'll just have to start over because that's just how it is. All right, some more tips for as you go. If you are not sure what to put, just ask. I personally think that your coach at Immerse is a really good person to ask for questions. Sometimes the person who gives you the application, sometimes they're a really good person to ask for questions too. But it is worth saying, not always. If you ask too many questions about the application, then they might not think you're a good fit for whatever it is you're applying for. And I'm not saying this is fair, but I'm just giving you guys a heads up for how some organizations are going to be. Not all of them, but just some of them. They might have the thought of, well, if they can't even fill out an application, why should we, let them live in our apartment? Unfortunately, it's not really fair, but that mentality can be behind some professionals. So if you're not sure what to put, asking your coach, I think, is a great and safe bet. That's exactly what we're here for. So another thing you want to do is make sure that you are capitalizing the right words. Things that you capitalize are, you always capitalize people's names, capitalize places, the name of companies, your address, your city, your state, your county, any titles of people or places or things. You're always going to want to capitalize those things. Also, as you're going, it is very possible. In fact, I would say there's probably 100% chance that you're never, ever going to completely fill out every single part of any application. There's always going to be parts where it doesn't apply or you don't know what to put, and a lot of people just leave it blank. I would encourage you guys to put N/A in all caps. So capital N / capital A, to put that in any places that you think you need to leave blank. Like, for example, it might ask you, if you're receiving unemployment benefits, write your amount here. That's where you would just put NA instead of completely skipping over it. However, there are a few places where this doesn't really count. There might be an entire page that's all about getting unemployment benefits, just for example. If you don't get unemployment, you do not have to put NA inside of every single blank on the entire page. You don't have to do that. You can just put NA at the top and then be done with it. Because if you put NA at the top, they're going to get the picture and know that anything else related to that doesn't have to be filled out. So you don't, if you're going to be putting NA in like 5 or more blanks, it's best to probably just leave it blank and put NA in the very top blank. I know that's probably a little bit confusing. I was going to say at the end of this class, if you guys want to actually do an application on Life Skills, so I can show you guys how it's done. Not that I'm a pro, but I've filled out a few in my day. We can totally do that. All righty. So the next point, I'd say be clear and short and to the point in the narrative parts of the application. So when I say narrative parts of the application, here's what I mean. There's going to be sections when you're like writing out full sentences, or you're maybe doing bullet points or explaining something in a lot of words. So pretty much any part of the application that's not checking a box or filling in the blank or circling the best option, that's called a narrative because you're writing a bunch of stuff. When you're filling out these parts, you want to give them all the information that they need. But no one wants to read a super long, super wordy application that really doesn't make a lot of sense. So your best bet is to be clear, short, and to the point, to do that for that part. If you don't know what they're asking for, then ask your coach. Again, we're here to help. Another good point is to don't outright lie on your application. I've seen this a lot of times where people will completely falsify certain things. And the facts are, most people that review applications do their research. If you're dishonest, they're going to find out. And if they find out that you're dishonest, they're probably not going to accept your application. They're probably going to end up rejecting you. So save yourself some time. Don't outright lie. And the last one is to choose fancy professional words. So the words you use are really important on your application. People who review applications really like fancy professional words. Whenever I'm filling out paperwork or filling out an application, I find myself Googling words all the time. So for example, let's say you have a job application and they want to know why you left your last job. Okay, so you might say, honestly, I left my last job because I didn't like it. I hated the manager and I kept getting into it with people. That's fine, but you don't want to say it like that on an application. You want to use fancy professional words. So you might try something different, like the work environment was not conducive to my success and didn't match like my working relationship preferences. See what I mean? That's saying the same thing, but it sounds a lot better, and you're using language that's very professional. So just something to think about, because you want to look good on an application. You want to be honest, but you also want to look good. So you got to find that balance. All right, so now let's talk about the documents that you need. Actually, I'm going to pause and I'm going to see if I've got anyone joining me. I'm going to go and look at the chat. Give me just a second. If you guys do have any questions or comments, put in the chat and I will be sure to take a look. Oh, hey, I see people. Okay, I see Deidre, I see Regina. Awesome, guys. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, guys, let's get back into it. So, about those documents, you're gonna need them. We've already talked about that. You wanna make sure that they're not expired or don't need to be renewed. So your ID expires, your social security card does not expire, your birth certificate does not. But a lot of documents do expire and need to be renewed. So you cannot submit anything like that that's been expired into an application because it's essentially no good. Right, okay. So your copies of your social security card and your copies of your ID typically need to be the front and the back. This is not always the case, but that does need to be kept in mind. You want to get copies of the front and the back. This might be obvious, but they should not be torn or stained. And some documents have to be signed. For example, your social security card, in order for anyone to take it, it has to be signed at the bottom. If anyone wants a copy of your lease has to be signed. If you submit an authorized form, maybe something that's notarized, or any proof that a person or organization is helping you somehow, those documents have to be signed. So a few times I've had my youth tell me, hey, I'm applying for this so-and-so, they want proof that I'm getting help in Immerse. So I'll type up a little letter and I'll sign the bottom. And they usually won't take my letter unless it's signed. So keep in mind that if you are submitting documents when you're doing an application, you do want to have a lot of your documents signed. All right, now let's talk about your history, okay? Now this is going to get a little bit nitpicky, but stay with me because it is important. When I say history, I'm going to be talking about medical history, maybe your hospitalization or the medicine that you're on, your rental or your housing history, your employment history, things like that. So one thing you want to keep in mind is that your timeline order is important. If you're outlining your history, you want to go from the most recent down to the longest ago. Here's what I mean. So let's say that you were in the hospital this year, last year, 3 years ago, and then 5 years ago. When you fill out your application, your first entry is going to be when you were in the hospital most recently, and then you're going to work yourself backwards. So you're going to start with the most recent, and then you would go to the last year, and then you'd go to 3 years ago, and then the very last entry should be when you were in the hospital 5 years ago. See what I mean? You want to keep it in that order typically. And you also want to be consistent in the order of each entry. especially if you're doing a job application. Let's say, I'll use me. I've worked at David's Burgers. I worked as a babysitter. I worked for a nonprofit called Friendship Community Care, and I've worked for Immerse. Those are a few places that I've worked. When I'm listing out all of those, I want to be consistent how I order each entry. So here's what I mean by that. Typically, you're going to list it as first the employer, and then your position, and then the dates you worked, and then your job description. Okay. So let's say I worked at David's Burgers. I was a cashier. I worked there from 2007 to 2014. And I give the description of my job. So when I move on to talk about Immerse, I'm going to do the same thing. I worked at Immerse. I was a street outreach coach. I worked there from 2018 to 2020. And then I list the things that I did at my job. So you want everything to be very uniform and to look the same. Again, I know this is kind of hard to explain, especially over Zoom. If you guys are a little bit confused about this, let me know, and I'll figure out a better way to kind of show you guys what I mean. But the bottom line is, you want everything to be very neat and very consistent throughout the entire application, and that includes your history as well. Alrighty, so one other thing when you're filling out an application is to keep in mind your references. So your references are basically people that you put down on your application that they're going to contact, and they're going to say something good about you. Like basically they'll put in a good word for you, okay? If you put someone down, like for example, your coach, what you want to do is you want to let that person know ahead of time. They don't really like to be surprised if they get a call like, hey, this is McDonald's, and you know, Anna said you're her reference, so can we talk? I don't want to be like, oh, I didn't know. It would be good if like Anna would tell me ahead of time, hey, you're a reference, so that they can be prepared. You should always do that. You should ask them if they're willing to do it, and then when you get their permission, you can put them down on your application. It's also good to use people who have known you for a really long time and are older than you. And this is not always the case. Someone who's known you ideally more than 3 years. Someone who is older than you. Again, sometimes not a good idea to use family, and it's sometimes not a good idea to use people that are your age, that are your friends, and kind of still in your peer group. Try to find someone who's older and has known you for a while. Just in general. All right, and when you are finishing that application, hallelujah, it can be really exhausting to do applications. One thing you want to do is you want to go back and clarify parts of the application if you need to. Sorry, I thought I was going to sneeze. For example, if you had a part that you weren't sure about, you want to talk about it. You can often send an email along with your application or call the person who you've been communicating with regarding your application. Maybe if you think there's a section or something that you said that might not make sense to someone else, talk about it. Send an email, send a text, call them and let them know. And make sure you address it within your, sorry, I'm looking at my notes. Make sure you address it with your, oh, okay, yeah. So the person that you've been talking to about your application, that's the person you typically want to talk to. So for example, I actually did this today. I turned in a voucher application, and I had a youth who was getting unemployment benefits. And so I had that paperwork ready to prove that they had unemployment benefits. And then just today, they were told that they no longer received them. And we also got a letter for that. And so right now, my youth is in the process of figuring out if they have benefits or if they don't. So because that's confusing, I emailed the person that I turned the application into and said, hey, this is confusing, let me explain. And so she emailed me back and told me exactly what to do. So that can be helpful. Another thing you want to do is to practice. Like I said, if you guys want to do like a pretend application, I'd be happy to do that with you guys over Zoom. If there's anyone who wants to like form a small group and actually get in person to fill out an application, I think that's a great idea. You guys let me know and I'll make it happen. I put this last one in all caps because it's so important and so many people forget to do it, including myself. This might be the most important thing, is follow up. After you have done the application, I know you might think it's kind of rude, but you want to remind people that you've done it and that you're eager. Of course, you can come off too strong. Definitely don't call every day. Maybe once a week, maybe twice a week. It just kind of depends on the situation. Keep contact information like a phone number or an email and reach out to those people and say, hi, I'm finished. Can I get a status on my application? Things like that. Like I said, you don't want to follow up too much because that can be perceived as annoying, and you want to be on the good side of the people that are reviewing your application. So again, if you're confused about this, talk to your coach. They're going to have great advice about how often to follow up. All right, guys, that is it. If you have questions or comments, let me know in the chat. And if you have any additional tips, obviously let me know. I'm going to go ahead and get out of this. Oop, there's me. Where am I on YouTube? Here we go. All right. Okay, I'm going to look at the chat, see if anybody's got anything. Any questions or comments about filling out an application? Oh, great question. Someone's asking me why we're doing it on YouTube. That's a really good question. So through YouTube, you don't have to have a Facebook account. So it's a little bit easier for those that, you know, might want to join us and don't have Facebook. Although I'm pretty sure you have to create a YouTube in order to use the chat function here. So that might not be conducive to a lot of people as well. So we're just trying things different. We don't want y'all to get bored. You know, we want to just try different things sometimes. That's part of it. Well, if there's nothing else, I think I'm going to wrap us up. I do think there's a pretty big delay. I'll put my phone number in the chat if anyone wants to reach me directly, just in case I missed anything. But I think I'm going to go ahead and close us out. Again, any questions or comments, reach out. I hope you guys are doing good. I do want to apologize. I have gotten behind on distributing gift cards. So you guys can expect those next week. So sorry about that, but I do have them and I have not forgotten about you guys. So I'm going to be getting those out next week. Those of you who have been attending are going to get more than one, which is great. So, all right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. It was good to see those of you who are with us, and I hope you guys have an awesome week. Bye, guys.